How does understanding the hierarchy of the brain that Dr. Perry was talking about give you better insight into confusing or challenging behaviors of a child? Behaviors of children who have experienced loss and trauma are often perplexing to adults. As you heard in the video, the brain of the child is processing the present as if it were in the past. Children, when they feel scared, act in the present as if the trauma or abuse or loss is still occurring. Children who have experienced trauma are not trying to misbehave, nor do they have complete control over their behavior until they feel safe enough to learn new patterns and skills. The child is frequently not responding from the higher levels or smart part of the brain, and rather is acting, interacting, and reacting from the more primitive, lower parts of the brain, which do not have the reason or sense that we might expect. What makes this especially hard to remember is that the brain is invisible to us from the outside. We are often looking at a child whose face or words do not tell us that their brain is functioning in a very underdeveloped way in these moments. Parenting a child who has experienced trauma and loss requires the parent to be attuned to the child's level of functioning. It takes a great deal of commitment from the parent to understand what is beneath the behaviors versus just reacting to the behaviors. Children who are anxious, upset, or scared are operating from the lower level of the brain, circled on this slide. Parents must work to help their child regulate when they are stuck in this area of the brain. When a child is experiencing anxiety or fear, it may be expressed in bad behavior. These behaviors are actually utilizing protective strategies. Anxiety and fear alters brain chemistry, suppresses a child's voice, places them in fight, flight, or freeze states, which causes them to be unable to discern their needs or suppress their conscience. A child is better able to listen when in this area of the brain. After a parent helps the child regulate, the emotional center of the brain becomes engaged and they can relate with the child's emotions. This part of the brain, the upper cortex, can reason and have more complex thought. A child can only get in this section of the brain when in a calm state. This is the reason it is so important to first regulate oneself and then help the child regulate. Trauma can have serious consequences for the normal development of children's brains, brain chemistry, and nervous systems. Trauma-induced alterations in biological stress systems can adversely affect brain development, cognitive and academic skills, and language acquisition. Traumatized children and adolescents display changes in the levels of stress hormones similar to those seen in combat veterans. These changes may affect the way traumatized children and adolescents respond to future stress in their lives and may also influence their long-term health. This slide shows two brain scans. The one on the left is that of a normal 3-year-old child who had good parenting, nurturing, and developed normally. The brain scan on the right is that of a 3-year-old who was completely left on his own in an orphanage in Romania. Researchers found that early institutionalization and severe physical and emotional neglect changed both the structure and function of the brain. Any time spent in an institution shrunk the volume of gray matter, or brain cell bodies, in the brain. Brain development is relationship dependent, and in institutions, those relationships generally do not happen. This slide shows two more brain scans. The one on the left shows healthy blood flow to all parts of the brain, showing a calm brain. The one on the right shows most blood flow going to the part of the brain where fight, flight, or freeze response is. We are going to examine this further, answering the question, where do our children live? First, let's talk about the concept of states. Understanding state-dependent functioning is the key to understanding many trauma-related behaviors. States will not always be present, they pass. And that's a good thing. For example, when a person is irritable from not eating or sleeping. But as we heard in the last video, when children have experienced trauma and loss, Their brains have been taught that they are in a state of distress regularly because their needs so rarely got met. Remember the cycle of attachment from the attachment theme? Rather than learning how to relax from their caregiver as other children learn to do, they learn the distress from their caregiver not coming or hurting them when they did come. And this teaches the child's brain a fearful, defensive, survival mode as a starting place rather than a moment they're just passing through. This is different than a child who developed more typically, a child whose brain and body learned that distressful moments will happen and then they will be able to relax again when they pass. So fast forward a few years, and a child with a more typical background may experience a minor stress and not be too bothered by it, or their bother won't be as intense. Let's watch another video clip with Dr. Perry to learn more about the brain functioning behind states.